Hello and welcome to another Pinball Workshop Tech and Tools. This time I've got 4 tools for us to look at today of some key things that I think that every pinball workshop should have. So let's start all the way over here first with which is known as a screw pitch gauge. See that there? So what a screw pitch gauge is that it allows you that if you're looking or you find a screw, a machine screw or something of that nature that you want to go and you want to match it to something else, whether you're ordering it online or you're going to Lowe's or Home Depot, you want to make sure that you gather the right information. So we can look here, we've got 2 different type of machine screws. So if I, for some reason, found these machine screws at the bottom of maybe my pinball machine, or they fell out of an assembly, or one broke, I may say, hey, I need to go figure out how I can measure these. So there's a couple different ways that you can do that. The first way is obviously you just take a length measurement. So maybe that looks like something like, okay, maybe it's a little bit over half an inch, that's 3/4 of an inch, or 3/4 of an inch there. And then maybe this one, okay, this one's smaller, maybe it's 5/8 or half to 5/8. But you can see there's also one major difference, is that the pitch of the thread is very different between the screw on the left and the screw on the right. So what that means is, if for some reason you found the screw that was exactly the same, you may run into a situation with the threads where the screw may actually go into the hole, but it won't turn, or it'll turn maybe three or four different times, and then just get stuck. And then you start to really have a major issue with that. Sometimes you'll see this with nuts as well, like maybe going through an assembly and you try to thread the nut and for some reason it just will not thread, even though it's the same diameter. So what's one way that you can tell these apart? And that's actually using this little utility called a pitch gauge. What you can see here is that I can actually unlock the pitch gauge and start to fan out the different sizes. So there are a lot of sizes on this side. You'll see a little number here. This actually says 32, and that'll go all the way down to 16. So this means that the higher the number, it's the higher of the pitch count, or the thread count on that. On our other side, if I unlock it, I can then just pop these out, and then you'll see I'll start with 15, and go all the way down to a pitch count of 4. So how is this helpful? So the reason why this is helpful is that, just like as I mentioned here, I'll say that I found this screw, or maybe this is a screw that went to a pop bumper cap. And for some reason, I can't find anything else that fits, or somebody put in a weird screw when I bought the machine, and it really bothers me, and I want to make these match. So what I can do here is I take my pitch count, my pitch gauge, and I start to measure. So here I am at 32, and I see that these aren't really lining up. It doesn't feel like that it's going into that gauge appropriately. It's kind of all over the place, like very floaty. So I just keep moving down. My next one here is 40. And what I see here is, boom, there's an automatic match. You can feel the teeth of the thread lock into the gauge. You just know it's right. So this tells me that this specific machine screw has a pitch gauge or pitch thread of 40. So if I'm going to Lowe's, then I can now measure this. I can also measure my gauge, and I find out this is actually a 440 screw. So I went from demystifying of buying 4 or 5 things or ordering 4 or 5 things online, and now I have exactly what that is. Great. But what about this other one? So let's check this one. So let's go back. We can see that. Let's see here. I've got 38. And again, I see that 38 here, it just doesn't want to fit. It just it kind of feels floaty. You can rub it against there. It's not good. Here's our 40 that we just tried a moment ago. That was good for us a moment. Let's try this one. Yeah, still kind of, you can feel it not wanting to engage the teeth on the thread. And now we have 32, and that's it. It locks into the thread, and it's not coming out. You can feel when you turn it, it's nice and tight. So this tells us that this machine screw has a thread count, or a thread gauge of 32. So now, doing some more research, and we look at, maybe specifically on our within our screw gauges, we now know that this thread size is 32, while our original one is 40. So we've kind of demystified part of it. But now what we do is we move over to our other tool. We need to find out the other piece of that. So this is just a very easy way where you can measure specific gauges from a bolt to a screw size. So in this case, I can measure. So we said earlier this is our 40, and we see that it's exactly an inch long. So this is a 1 inch screw. But now I got to figure out where does it fit. Now, unfortunately here, I see that it can fit in 6, but it's a little loose, and I don't have one for 4. So really bad example here, but you can see that 6 seems to be way too loose. This is actually going to be a 4. So that again helps us that information. It's going to be a 440 at exactly 1 inch. Now this is the one that a minute ago we had that had a pitch count of 32. So let's just try here. Let's go to 6. Well, it kind of fits in 6, but doesn't feel, it's a little tight. If I drop it in 8, it fits almost perfect in 8. So this tells us that this is going to be a screw gauge of 8, and going to work great for us in terms of moving forward. I go ahead and do this a quick measure, and I see that this looks like it's 3/4 inch. So again, we now have kind of demystified what these two are. So now when I find any machine screw throughout my pinball machine with these two tools, being the pitch gauge and just a standard measuring for bolts and gauges, I'm now able to find out what the screws are and then buy the appropriate thing that matches. So great, you'll create two tools, very cheap in terms of this. You can find these all over the place. I'll have a link below on where to purchase those. Move that out of the way. Now we move on to what you could either call scissors or shears or cutoffs. There's a variety of different ones of these. These are what they call flush shears or flush scissors. I really like these. I have a ton of these. These are very, very cheap. You can buy these over in like AliExpress. You can buy them on Amazon. I'll put a link below where you can buy these at. But when you need to cut something that's extremely flush, whether you're cutting the legs off maybe an electronic component on a board, or you're wanting to take off just enough wire to get you by, this works out really, really well. They're very cheap. They're spring loaded. They stay relatively sharp, and if you lose them, they're a couple bucks. You just move on from them and go from there. So for a majority of things that you'll use in terms of where you're having to cut things, these are really great. I would really suggest picking up a couple pair of these. One for a go bag if you're going out and helping others fix machines, but these are great. Just to give you an example, here is just some solder. And as you can see with these flush shears, they just very easily cut and they do the job. So nothing very fancy here, but an awesome tool if you do not have these. If you're used to more of what I would call regular scissors, things like this, I keep these down to open boxes to get these out. I don't necessarily recommend these. I find them too long, too complicated, and where you really need to cut, if you're cutting something maybe under a play field or snipping a wire, you really need a lot of pressure here at the tip to get it under and cut. These are great for just general use, but for what we do in the pinball world, I don't find these a very good complement. That's why when you use something like this, you can very easily, even with just a tip, cut that off and you're good to go. Now, in my prior life, I'm an IT guy by trade today, but I used to work on the physical layer. That means pulling and doing networking things. And I've always been a good fan of Johnner Tools. Clean Tools, another company that you've maybe seen some tools around, you'll find those. But these are what we call electrician scissors or telecommunication scissors. These is what I use for many years of running much cable, primarily Cat5. A couple of things that you'll like to know about these is that not only are they more ergonomic in terms of how they sit in the hand, where you put this piece kind of in the palm of your hand, you put your thumb through here, and you really kind of have this kind of look in terms of how you hold the scissors. So instead of what you would see with a normal pair of scissors, where you're just kind of putting your hand through and making this kind of motion, you get a lot more strength by putting this in the palm of your hand and using it more like this, using your thumb as the lever in this point. So what can you cut? So I pulled a piece of Cat 5 just to show, but when I have this type of arrangement, I can very easily cut through Cat 5 with very little effort. The other thing that you'll ever notice, if you ever cut wire, so let me show you again. If you cut wire with standard scissors, you'll see that sometimes the wire wants to kind of slip down the blade. The great thing about scissors like these electrician scissors is that they're serrated on this side here. It's going to be kind of hard to tell but there's a serration here. And what that does, it causes things not to slip. So you'll see when I make a cut, that even when I make a cut at an angle, they don't slip in my hand. You don't see the wire moving away from the scissor. Again, here, these scissors, you get some pressure here at the end to cut, but really work very, very well. Now, one of the other key things that I like to show is that not only are they great for primarily a lot of use, but real quickly here, let me see if I can strip this wire. I'm going to show my old skills, or attempt to show my old skills here on stripping Cat 5. But when you have Cat 5 and you have wire, I think this is actually 24 AWG, but built into these scissors is actually wire strippers. There's actually two different sizes. You see those little notches right there for stripping wire. So let me just take one. Let's take this brown. I'll drop it in there. Pull. Whoop. Go. It's so easy that I could do it on. There we go. So now you can see that stripped nice and clean. So it works great. I don't necessarily use the strippers day to day from a pinball perspective. I think I'll show some strippers. That's what she said. I'll show some wire strippers later that I like a lot more. But a good pair of shears or scissors like this, they will go a mile. These will not get dull on you. You can have these for 20 years and look great. In fact, my prior version, I actually, they were still good. I just lost them. So I bought these here recently, and I'll have a link down in the description below about where to pick up a real nice pair of scissors like this. But you will not go wrong with these. So to recap, scissors, great to get. You've got an inexpensive version that can do a primarily of things, and you've got more heavy-duty, more commercial style electrician telecommunication scissors to use. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, you've got your gauges, your pitch count gauge, and also your screw gauges to find out when you find weird and random screws, which you will find, especially if someone else has taken a machine apart and put weird stuff in weird places. Finding out what those are. Very two key things to do. So that's going to do us here for the Pinball Workshop's tech and tools. If you like this video, please feel free to give it a like, comment below, or if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please feel free to do that and share this with any friends that you may have that'd be interested in learning more things like this. All right, until next time.